Imagine getting a call from your ex, not to catch up, but to demand a part of you back. Specifically, a kidney. This isn't a bad breakup story. It's a jaw-dropping true account of a request so unbelievable, it forces you to question everything you thought you knew about past relationships and personal sacrifice. It was a grey Thursday afternoon when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Daniel. My ex. For a moment, my chest tightened, a flood of memories rushing through me. I thought he might be calling to check in, or maybe he had some old belongings he wanted to pick up. But nothing could have prepared me for the words that spilled out of his mouth. I need my kidney back. At first, I laughed. A short, awkward chuckle, the kind you release when you're not sure if someone is joking. But Daniel wasn't laughing. His voice was deadly serious, low and tense, like he had rehearsed the line 100 times. My mind flashed back to 5 years ago, when I was lying in a hospital bed beside him, groggy from anesthesia, my abdomen stitched together. I had given him one of my kidneys, willingly, lovingly, because he was my partner, my future, my everything. It hadn't been a question. Of course I would save his life. But now, here he was, years later, demanding it back as if it were a sweater I'd borrowed and forgotten to return. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to steady myself as disbelief coursed through me. Daniel, that's not how it works, I stammered. You can't just ask for an organ back. I need it, he insisted, his voice sharp. You gave it to me because we were together. We're not together anymore, so it's not yours to keep. The logic was absurd, twisting reality into something grotesque. Yet his conviction was so firm, so chilling, that a part of me froze. For a split second, I even questioned myself. Was there some bizarre loophole in the medical or legal system? Could he actually have a claim on my body again? I spent that night tossing and turning, the phone call replaying in my mind like a broken record. His voice, his words, the surreal nature of the demand, it was like stepping into an alternate universe. I kept asking myself, who does that? Who demands back something you gave them in order to survive? I couldn't stop pacing the kitchen after that call. My mind wandered back to every warning people had given me before the transplant. You're too young to give away something so vital, my father had said, his brow furrowed with worry. My best friend, Melissa, had practically staged an intervention. But I didn't listen. Because at the time, love made me invincible, made me think I was doing something noble, something that proved devotion. And now that devotion had turned into ammunition in Daniel's hands. The audacity of his request echoed louder each hour that passed. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was joking. Maybe he was having a breakdown. Maybe his new doctor had put ideas into his head. Yet deep down, I knew Daniel well enough to understand. He wasn't joking. When Daniel latched onto something, he never let go. That's why I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus. Because somewhere out there, a man walked around with my kidney, and he wanted me to suffer for it. The thought of it made me nauseous. I traced my fingers along the scar that had faded over the years but still pulsed with memory. That scar was proof that a part of me was gone forever, and no matter what Daniel wanted, it was never coming back. But the problem wasn't medical, it was emotional, psychological. He was trying to reclaim power, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to withstand it. That night, I whispered into the silence of my apartment, as if trying to convince myself, he can't take anything else from me. Not anymore. Sleep never came easily after that call. Instead, I was drawn backward, spiraling into memories I thought I had buried. Daniel and I had been inseparable once. We met in college, bonded over bad coffee and long nights in the library. He was magnetic, charming, impulsive, and utterly reckless in ways that thrilled me. I loved him fiercely, maybe recklessly too. When he was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, our world collapsed. He tried to act tough, brushing it off as if it were just another hurdle, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. Dialysis drained him, left him pale and exhausted. The waiting list for a donor kidney was years long. And that's when I made the decision that would bind us together forever, or so I thought. The test confirmed it. I was a match. Everyone tried to talk me out of it. My parents pleaded with me, worried about my health, about tying myself so completely to a man who wasn't my husband. But love is louder than reason. I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers. I told myself that if I could give him life, then our love would be unbreakable. The surgery was brutal. I remember the sterile lights of the operating room, the smell of antiseptic, the cold fear that I might not wake up. But I did, and when I opened my eyes, Daniel was there. He squeezed my hand, his eyes wet with tears. "You saved me," he whispered. And in that moment, it felt worth it. For a while, things were good. We were closer than ever, bound by this intimate, irreversible sacrifice. But slowly, cracks appeared. The gratitude that had once softened him hardened into resentment. He began to withdraw, picking fights over trivial things. I convinced myself it was the stress, the recovery, the adjustment. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The breakup was messy, like tearing out stitches before the wound had healed. He accused me of controlling him, of holding the kidney over his head. I never once used it against him, but I could see how the weight of my sacrifice suffocated him. When we finally ended things, I told myself it was for the best. Still, the scar across my abdomen throbbed as if reminding me of what I had lost, not just the organ, but the future I thought would have. Looking back, I realized how reckless I had been. The doctors had warned me about the risks: reduced kidney function, long-term health complications, even the possibility that my own life expectancy could shorten. But Daniel's smile, his desperate gratitude, had erased those fears. I told myself I was writing us a love story that would last forever. But forever had expired much sooner than I imagined. The months following the transplant were both the most intimate and the most suffocating period of my life. Daniel treated me like a savior at first, but quickly the dynamics shifted. Gratitude curdled into guilt, and guilt fermented into resentment. He started accusing me of using my sacrifice as leverage, though I never once brought it up. I began to notice the distance, late nights out, unexplained silences, and eventually, outright hostility. By the time we broke up, I was shattered but oddly relieved. What I didn't realize was that even though the relationship ended, my body still tethered me to him. Every breath he took was sustained in part by me. It was both horrifying and strangely beautiful. But mostly, it felt like an open wound I couldn't stitch closed. After the initial shock of Daniel's call, I tried to push it out of my mind. Surely, it was just a moment of madness, a desperate outburst that would fade with time. But Daniel didn't stop. Over the next week, he sent texts, voicemails, even emails, all variations of the same demand. "You owe me." It wasn't a gift, it was conditional. "Give it back, or I'll take legal action." The absurdity would have been laughable if it weren't so unsettling. Each message was a knife, twisting deeper into the scar of our shared past. Friends I confided in were outraged, some furious, others incredulous. "He's insane," one friend spat. "Block him. He can't do anything." But blocking him felt too simple, too dismissive of the sheer audacity of what he was doing. Out of morbid curiosity, or maybe fear, I contacted a lawyer. Sitting across from the attorney, I felt foolish explaining the situation. But to my relief, the lawyer quickly dismissed Daniel's threats. "There is no legal basis for this," she assured me. "Once an organ is transplanted, it becomes part of the recipient's body. It's irreversible." Relief should have followed, but instead, I felt an eerie unease. Daniel wasn't a man who backed down easily. His persistence had always been both his charm and his curse. If he truly believed he had a claim, what would he do next? The anxiety gnawed at me. I started double-checking my locks, flinching whenever the phone rang. The kidney I had given him, the piece of me that lived inside him, felt less like a symbol of love and more like a chain, tethering me to someone I wanted to escape. It was as if my body itself had become a battlefield. I saved every message he sent me, not because I wanted to, but because some part of me feared I might need them one day, as evidence. The messages started small but grew darker, more insistent. He sent pictures of his medication, hospital records, even screenshots of Google searches. About organ transplant laws. "You'll regret this if you ignore me," one text read. It chilled me to my core. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? My ex wants his kidney back. It sounded ludicrous, almost comedic, yet it wasn't funny when I was living it. Every knock at the door made me jump. Every shadow on the street looked like him. I found myself living like a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the very act of generosity that was supposed to save him. I couldn't avoid him forever. One evening, after weeks of silence on my part and endless harassment on his, Daniel showed up outside my apartment. The knock was soft at first, then louder, insistent. My heart pounded as I peered through the peephole. There he was, older, thinner, but with the same piercing eyes that once captivated me. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, just a crack. "You need to stop this," I said firmly. "You can't have it back. It doesn't work that way." His jaw tightened. "You think you're better than me now? Walking around with 2 kidneys while I'm stuck with one that doesn't even feel like mine." I blinked, stunned. "Daniel, it is yours. It's in your body. It's keeping you alive." "It's not mine," he snapped. "It never will be. Every time I feel it, I think of you. I don't want to carry a piece of you anymore. So give it back." His words cut deeper than any scalpel ever could. This wasn't just about biology. It was about resentment, about the unbearable weight of intimacy that lingered long after love had died. I realized then that his demand wasn't about the kidney at all. It was about control, about punishing me for leaving. "Daniel," I said softly, "I gave you that kidney because I loved you. You don't have to love me back. But you can't erase what I did. And you can't undo it." For a moment, I thought he might break down. His eyes shimmered with something, anger, grief, maybe even regret. But then he turned, storming down the hall, his footsteps echoing like thunder. I closed the door, my hands trembling, the silence heavier than any argument. Standing face to face with him again was like opening an old wound. I could see the toll illness and anger had taken on him. His skin was sallow, his frame gaunt, and yet his eyes burned with a terrifying energy. He wasn't here for closure. He was here to rip open scars and salt them until I bled again. "I can't carry this anymore," he said, almost breaking. "It's like you're inside me, controlling me." "I'm not controlling you, Daniel. You're alive. That's all I wanted." "Alive, but not free," he hissed. It struck me then. This wasn't about kidneys or bodies or even love. This was about his inability to let go, to move on. And maybe part of me hadn't moved on either, because here I was, still arguing, still trembling, still hoping for a version of him that no longer existed. I realized I wasn't fighting for my kidney. I was fighting for my peace. After that night, Daniel's calls and messages dwindled, fading into silence. Maybe he realized the futility of his demands, or maybe he just found a new way to channel his bitterness. Either way, the storm had passed, but its wreckage remained. I spent months untangling the mess he had left inside me. Therapy became my anchor, a place where I could dissect the twisted layers of love, sacrifice, and resentment. I learned to stop blaming myself for giving too much, for not seeing the red flags sooner, for carrying guilt like a second scar. My kidney was gone, but my worth wasn't. In time, I came to see the ordeal for what it was, a brutal lesson in boundaries. Love doesn't mean self-erasure. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee gratitude. And sometimes, the people we save aren't meant to stay in our lives. Years later, the scar on my abdomen is still there. It's a reminder, not of him, but of me, of the strength it took to give, and the strength it took to walk away. When I catch my reflection, I no longer see loss. I see survival. Daniel's story faded into the background of my life, just another chapter in the long, complicated book of love and heartbreak. But the lesson remains sharp, etched into me as permanently as the scar. Never again will I give away pieces of myself to someone who doesn't know how to hold them. Because some things, once given, are not returnable. And my life, my body, my boundaries, they are mine to keep. Even as the years passed, I would sometimes dream of him. In the dreams, he was always standing at the foot of my bed, asking for what I could never give. But with time, the dreams lost their power. I woke up stronger, steadier, more myself. I even began to date again, cautiously, testing the waters of trust. Each time I explained the scar to someone new, I braced for judgment, but instead, I found empathy. The right people understood. I started volunteering with an organ donation awareness group. It felt poetic, reclaiming the narrative. My sacrifice no longer belonged to Daniel's bitterness, it belonged to others who saw the beauty in giving. And in giving to strangers, I found healing for myself. Because that's the truth about scars, they don't just mark where we've been hurt. They remind us that we survived.